Boa noite, bem-vindos à Universidade de Caxias do Sul e bem-vindos à nossa International Week. Meu nome é André, Felipe, Streck, eu sou Pró-Reitor de Pesquisa e Pós-Graduação e teremos uma noite hoje muito especial, onde vamos falar de um tema fundamental que é a transdisciplinaridade e tudo que ela pode nos trazer e como nós podemos utilizá-la para o nosso crescimento. Lembro a todos que vocês agora estão numa universidade comunitária. A função da Universidade de Caxias do Sul é justamente trazer crescimento para a nossa região. Absolutamente tudo que fazemos é pensando na região, mas também temos que olhar para o mundo, temos que olhar para outros países. Vamos ensinar aos nossos alunos a poderem trabalhar em outros locais, a entenderem outras culturas, ou seja, serem cidadãos do mundo. E para isso, nós temos essa semana tão especial, que é a International Week. Professor Matheus, fale um pouco mais sobre essa semana.
Boa noite a todos e a todas. Eu vou pedir licença para passar agora a linguagem em inglês. Essa vai ser uma sessão painel em inglês, desenvolvida pela professora Gabriele. So, welcome everybody to the 4th International Week. It is a pleasure to have you here, Gabriele also. This is a special session that I'd like to congratulate Professor Danilo for the vision to bring this concept of inter and transdisciplinarity, which I personally believe it's part of a process of the future of the university, a communitary university that needs to solve social, global, and even complex problems that need to articulate different areas of knowledge and the community that we are engaged. So thank you so much. I hope from this section we can plant some seeds to maybe advance in institutional policy and create other disciplines, structures, and learn from Gabriele from ITD. How can we institutionalize transdisciplinarity in the context of our university? So without further ado, I'd like to pass the word to Professor Danilo and congratulate and thank you, Daniel, for bringing us all this.
Well, thank you, Professor André, Professor Matheus, and Gabriele. Thank you very especially for your time to be with us this evening. Evening for us, morning for you. I think it's not necessary. Gabriele and everybody is with us to make a long speech for justifying the importance of inter and disciplinarity. All of us have heard about it, studied something about it. Some of us try to apply something in our projects, usually individually or in small groups. But the big challenge really is to institutionalize transdisciplinarity. This, I think, is the big challenge that we have at all levels. So, Gabriele, and this is where we are sure you can help us. You can help us with your experience, with your work and vision. Let me briefly introduce you to this audience. We are a small audience, but a very special one. And this session is being recorded, so it will be used in other occasions. Yeah, it also transmitted through YouTube, so we may have people in other candidates of the university listening to us and watching us. Some words about Gabriele Banner. She is Professor of Integration and Implementation Sciences at the Australian National University, Canberra. She is developing the new discipline of integration and implementation cycles to improve research trained for tackling complex societal and environmental problems. She is also the inaugural president of the Global Alliance for Inter- and Transdisciplinarity. In December 2024, she received the Australian National University most prestigious accolade, the Peter Baumel Award, which recognizes eminent achievement and merit of the highest order. She has held visiting appointment at Harvard University, the National Socio-Environmental Synthesis Center at the University of Maryland, the Institute of Advanced Sustainable Studies in Potsdam, Germany, and many other short-time visits to many places. I will only mention one of her books, Disciplining Interdisciplinary, which is a quite interesting and challenging title. Integration and Implementation, Sciences for Researching Complex Real-World Problems. That's what we need. Gabriele, thank you for being with us. You have the floor, so you can use your time. We're thinking about 40, 50 minutes, and then we have some time for questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you so much for inviting me and for that introduction. And it's a delight to be here. Small is beautiful. And I hope that we'll be able to have a good discussion. As Danilo said, it's morning here, so I appreciate, and I know that it's a very inhospitable hour for you, so I appreciate you coming. I do know your part of the world a little bit. I've been to Florianopolis and Porto Alegre, so I'm very, the southern part of Brazil is a beautiful area. So I'm delighted to be here to talk about one of my favourite topics, which is inter and transdisciplinarity. I was able to advance the slides before, but I can't now. Let me see. No, I think you're sharing your slides. Okay. So I was going to talk about 4 things. So I was going to talk a little bit about the changes that I've seen over my career, some lessons from the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity, of which I'm the president, and then to give you some outstanding cases that may give you some ideas for things that you might want to do at your university, and then talk a little bit about a toolkit that hopefully will help you with this work. Yeah, all right. So it's not clear to me whether I'm advancing the slides or whether you're advancing the slides. Can you are you able to tell me? Anyway, so I've made this kind of a cartoon. No, go back, please. I've made this cartoon to give you a little bit of a sense of how it feels that for most of my career, it's felt like there's been a headwind. There have been times when it's been smooth sailing, but never a time when it's felt like this is becoming embodied in what universities do. But now it feels different. It feels like there's a lot of interest. It feels like there's a lot of action. I should say that there have been times in the past when it's also felt smooth sailing, but that's never lasted for very long. So it's not clear whether now is a real change or whether it's a tipping point. I'd like to think it's a tipping point. When I was an undergraduate in the 1970s, people started talking about the importance of multidisciplinarity. People started to realize that the disciplines, while they're really important, are not enough for tackling the sort of problems that were starting to become more evident in the 1970s, particularly environmental problems. Now, of course, those problems are even larger. And we've moved from talking about only multidisciplinarity to also talking about inter and transdisciplinarity, and even beyond that in terms of the work that I'm doing on integration and implementation sciences. So, yeah, thank you. So over my lifetime, I think the indicators that I'm using to suggest that there is a real change, that there has been a tipping point, that it is smoother sailing now, that there are more centres and departments around the world that are doing inter and transdisciplinarity, that there are more jobs available at all levels, that there are granting bodies that are specifically providing funding for this kind of work, that there are more journals that publish this work, more conferences and more courses, so that there seems to be a groundswell of activity. And I hear less complaints among my colleagues that they can't get jobs. The complaints are still there, but there seem to be less of them. So let me move on. Okay, to some lessons from the ITD Alliance. Next slide, please. So, the ITD Alliance is the Global Alliance for Inter and Transdisciplinarity, and it had its first conversations about forming this in 2017. There was a previous organisation that we built on that hadn't survived. We had the first meeting of people who were interested in 2019, and it was formally founded in 2021. I should say that I'm giving URLs for all of this information, and Danilo has a copy of the slides, which he is very welcome to share with you, rather than if you're interested in following any of this information up. The picture on the right-hand side is how our membership has changed over time. Can I just stop for a minute? Can I just share my own slides rather than you sharing them for me? It'll be a lot easier and a lot smoother. Is that possible? Can you turn off and I turn my presentation on? Okay, that's better. Thank you. All right. It seems like all the animations have been lost. So I was hoping to just give you small pieces of information at a time, but that doesn't happen. Anyway, so one of the things, so we've always been called a global alliance, but it's taken time for us to really build up the global aspects. We now have a number of regional networks, starting with Oceania, Asia, and started this year, and we've just in the process of starting a regional network in Latin America and the Caribbean, and Danilo is involved in the organising committee of that, and we hope that you'll get involved. We also have a newsletter or a news bulletin, and it has a special section where articles are written in Portuguese and Spanish. We've published those articles over time. Danilo contributed a great one about Orlando Fowles Borders celebration. So please, if you're interested, this is a great way to get involved. One of the things that have been important is conferences. The ITD Alliance started because of conferences started by the Swiss Academies, which set up something called TDNet, and these conferences started in 2008. They were very small when they started. It was a very small group of people. And from 2017 onwards, the ITD Alliance started co-organising them, and they're held every 2 to 3 years. The conferences keep growing, and they're an incredibly energising thing to do. So the next conference is next year in Portugal, And if you're able to go, I'd really strongly recommend it. It's a great opportunity to meet people from around the world. It's a great opportunity to find out what's happening. There are a whole lot of activities to get involved in. And as I said, it's a really energizing activity. We've also co-organised the next IEI conference here in South America at the University of Chile, which is going to be held next month. We've two of the plenary speakers from the ITD Alliance, Helena Gomeres and Billy Acri. And we've organised a panel on inter and transdisciplinary ways of thinking, bringing perspectives from Bangladesh, Bolivia, Chile, Egypt and Nigeria. So this will also be recorded if you can't go to that conference, but that conference is a great opportunity to meet colleagues from the region. I understand it's been growing from year to year. And it's an exciting opportunity to get together with people from the region who are interested in this kind of work. We've also co-organised a spotlight series with a group in Germany, also on institutionalization. And this has presented perspectives from 9 countries. And again, if you're interested, there's a great series of talks here to look at. So there's a lot of things happening around people thinking about institutionalization, and a lot of things that you can look at and draw on as you get more involved in doing this work. The other thing that we did was, in collaboration with a US group, was we ran a series of workshops in regions around the world, including one in Latin America, looking at what training needs were for inter and transdisciplinarity. This is the material that's on the left. Out of that, so as well as looking at training needs, so the report is available if you're interested, as well as talking about training needs, one of the things that this highlighted was that we use very different language to talk about inter and transdisciplinarity. So not everybody uses those terms, interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity. As you'll know, you have a long history in Latin America of participatory research, of participatory action research. Those terms are often used in Latin American countries. And so we've started a series of videos looking at the plurality of terms that we use and what they mean. And these, on the right-hand side of the slide, are 3 of the videos. And interestingly, they 2 of them come from your region, one from Mexico and one from Brazil. And Uli Wilsmeyer, who made the first one, has also got a long relationship with Latin America. So Latin America is featuring quite prominently in thinking about some of this work around institutionalization and what it means and what's required. So that's kind of by way of setting a background of what the ITD Alliance is doing and thinking about, and the importance that we place on institutionalization and making opportunities for people to get involved. And now I want to talk about some outstanding cases, outstanding in terms of excellent. Most of these I've had some personal involvement with, sometimes not to any great extent, but they're all things that I've chosen them also for different lessons that they give to illustrate different ways of doing institutionalization. So the first thing to say is that there are 3 institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean that are institutional members of the ITD Alliance. So the ITD Alliance has both institutional members and individual members. And of course, we would welcome you joining in either capacity. I should have also said, when I talked about the news bulletin earlier, that anybody can subscribe to the news bulletin. And even if you're not ready to join, please subscribe. I think you'll find it's a great source of what's happening in the world in this particular area. So really welcome you doing that. So as you can see, there are 3 institutions in the region who are members of the ITD Alliance. They were all, the first and the last were members right at the beginning. The second has joined a little more recently. And I want to say a little bit more about Espacio Interdisciplinario from Uruguay, where I've had the pleasure of spending a little bit of time there quite a long time ago. So it was established in 2009, so it's been going for a long time in that, and it's experienced that bumpy bicycle ride that I showed at the beginning. It's an interdisciplinary space that feeds into the whole university. It promotes research, teaching, and outreach. So they have some money that they're able to allocate for research across the university, and they run some core academic programs. The conference that I talked about a little while ago in Chile in September was started by Espacio Interdisciplinario back in 2016. In 2018, they formed a network called Enlace, which is now carrying the conference, and the network brings together a number of universities. And the Spotlight series that I talked about features Espacio Interdisciplinario talking about the kind of work that they do. So if you wanted to see more about what's already happening in a close neighbour, it's an interesting model of having a group that is an organised group at the centre of the university, but that feeds out to all areas of the university. The second group that I want to talk about is Hong Kong Baptist University in China, and particularly their division of transdisciplinary undergraduate programs. So this is much newer. It was established in 2022. This is a focus on teaching. They focus on a range of, their teaching focuses on these core areas: arts and technology, global entertainment. You can read them for yourselves. A lot of inter and transdisciplinary work focuses on sustainability. Some of it is more broadly focused, and I guess one of the decisions that people have to make is whether they're going to take this kind of broad focus or whether they're going to concentrate on sustainability. One of the interesting things that they do is that they take their students on study tours, usually for a week. So they did a study tour, and they have students at different levels in the undergraduate program. So the third-year students came to Sydney and Canberra this year. The first-year students went to Seoul in Korea this year. So, and what they do is the students meet with other students and interact about the kind of work that they're doing and try to find common interests and areas and develop things together. The other thing that that this group and the university as a whole has done is that they hold summits. So the Pacific Asia Summit on Transdisciplinary Education, they've held 2, one last year and another one this year. And these then take the conversation about teaching more broadly into the region, and they have keynote speakers from around the region and bring people in to talk about education, particularly transdisciplinary education. One of the interesting things they've done this year is that they've organised for their students to be ambassadors for the ITD Alliance. So the students have learnt a bit about the ITD Alliance. More importantly, they've learnt where to find information, accurate information about the ITD Alliance, so that if people want to know more, they can be ambassadors for us. One of the things to say about Hong Kong Baptist University that I think is really important is they didn't feel like they had to know everything before they started. They got started and they're continuing to improve. So it's get started, get better is kind of a motto for what they do. And I think a lot of the centres and departments and courses that are starting now are working on that principle. People have discovered that inter- and transdisciplinarity are important, have started to thinking we should really be doing this, and are getting involved and starting it and then learning more about it as they go. It's a bit frustrating for people who have been scholars in the area for a long time that people are reinventing the wheel, but I think it's actually more important that people are doing the work and interested in working better. And I think it's also interesting to have different perspectives from different countries. So different countries have very different ways of operating, very different priorities. And so clearly, Hong Kong and China are a very different kettle of fish from Brazil or Germany. And so there's always, given that this is work on complex problems, there's always going to be a slightly different flavour from different countries as well. To make that case more pointedly, in Egypt, there's a national interdisciplinary network, which is focused more on research than teaching. Their focus is very much on sustainable development, but they look at multiple aspects of sustainable development, and they certainly have people involved who aren't kind of core sustainable development people as you might think about them. They started in a very different way from most. They started working with a commercial company called Knowledge E and brought them in to educate the researchers. So about 100 people in total researchers have been educated over about 5 years by this group. And that group, Knowledge E, then brought in experts, of whom I was one. Uli Wilsma, who I've shown on a previous slide, was one. So there are a bunch of experts who came in to run these courses to really get the faculty up to speed. And the kind of interesting thing about Egypt is that the education is led and fairly tightly controlled by the government. And it's very hierarchical. So it's a very different way of organising inter and transdisciplinarity from what we see in other areas. But it's also a really interesting case study of how they're institutionalizing it in their country. I wanted to talk about Boku University in Vienna, which has a doctoral program that I think is really interesting case for looking at institutionalization. Their focus is very much on sustainability, and they started in 2007 to 2016 with this doctoral school on sustainable development, which is now the doctoral school for transitions to sustainability. It's an international program, so students from around the world can apply. So they have a combination of both local students and students from other countries. And again, when they were being established, they were not very expert in transdisciplinarity, and they brought in international guests, of whom I was one, Christian Pohl from UTS, from Zurich was another. And the students, so having a doctoral program means that you can guide students in doing transdisciplinary work across their doctorate. There's a lot of thinking now about what that means, given that transdisciplinary work is often collaborative. So there's a lot of things to grapple with. But Boku's done a great job. And again, it's a case study to think about whether if you want to do set up a doctoral program. You probably already have doctoral programs, but how to make doctoral programs the core of transdisciplinarity. The other thing that's been really interesting about Boku is that they've now got a professorship, which it doesn't have transdisciplinarity in the name, but it definitely has transdisciplinarity in the role description. So this position is about supporting transformation. It's a hub for experimentation, and they're asked to organise dialogue and co-production events, that they are asked to lead transdisciplinary work packages in the kind of funding that they get. This professorship has been asked to set up a transdisciplinary experimental space and to teach transdisciplinary methods. And the position was also going to further develop inter and transdisciplinary theories. The appointment has been made, but not yet announced. And it's very exciting to see a university really make this kind of position available, particularly because there are a number of people who've been in kind of the late mid-career stage who've been working in transdisciplinarity for a long time, and now to have senior positions open for those people is really very important. So another thing to think about, whether that's something that may be of interest in your context. The TD lab in Zurich in Switzerland, ETH Zurich, as you will know, is one of the premier universities. Has been one of the founding institutions for particularly for transdisciplinarity. They've done a lot of the really important research that's laid the groundwork. They've done a lot of important teaching. And here I just wanted to highlight two of the things that they've done that, again, I think provide good models. And these are summer schools and winter schools. So the summer school is something that targets master's, PhD, and early career researchers. It's international, so it's open to people from around the world to apply to take part. And again, the combination of local and international makes for a very vibrant community. It's free, except students have to pay for their own transport and accommodation to get, if you're an international student, you have to get to Zurich. And the summer school is a 5-day on-site course, and it's actually going to be held next week. The winter school isn't held anymore. I'm hoping they'll start it again. It was a really interesting model. So this was a residential school. It lasted for 2 weeks. It went to a rural community. So it went to a community that had 8,500 inhabitants, and it went back to the same community for a number of years, and then it went to a new community. The students worked on problems that the community had defined, and the staff were there to coach both the community in shaping the problems in a way that the students could deal with them, and to coach the students both in working on the problems and in building their skills. Because the students were living together for that whole 2 weeks in one place, it's a very intense form of teaching, and was very appreciated by the students who took part in it. There's a brief article that I've shown here by 3 of the students talking about how this works and what was important for them. And this is something from the toolkit that I'll talk about at the end of the talk. And the final thing I wanted to talk about is something that we're doing at my university. So we have these things called graduate attributes, and this is something that every undergraduate should be able to do by the time they graduate. So we have 3 graduate attributes. One is that they should be good at critical thinking. One is that they should be good at understanding the role of Indigenous knowledge and the Indigenous Australian communities in developing that knowledge and in the work that we do. And the 3rd graduate attribute is that they should have the capability to employ discipline-based knowledge in transdisciplinary problem solving. This is a really interesting way of thinking about what undergraduates should do. I should say that despite the fact that it's at my university, I didn't have anything to do with this graduate attribute. It came from another group doing teaching in a particular way. So the important thing about the graduate attribute is that every undergraduate at the university should graduate with this capability. It doesn't matter if they're doing pure mathematics or environmental science. Every undergraduate should be able to use their disciplinary knowledge for transdisciplinary problem solving. The ANU is organised in colleges. So we have a College of Science and Medicine, we have a College of Arts and Social Sciences, we have a College of Adjunct Pacific. So all of the colleges are involved, and existing courses can be tagged as helping to develop this attribute, and new courses can be developed. So to be tagged, the course has to demonstrate that it teaches the students about interaction, so that teamwork or something similar to teamwork is part of the course. Students have to get an understanding of context, an understanding of the bigger picture in which their course is embedded. And it needs to have two of the following four. So it needs to help, students need to integrate. They need to understand that there are different ways of looking at the world. The course needs to provide information about how to make change happen. And the course needs to provide information about being systemic. So a range of courses have asked to become TD tagged across the university, and these are the criteria that they meet. The assessment of the courses at the beginning was done by one person who said, yes, you can have a tag, or no, you can't. And now there's a committee that looks at the courses. And what we're encouraging the courses to do, is to become better at how they do this. So to really think about how they're doing this promotional work. And we're also looking at setting up courses that bring it all together. So these courses can be quite fragmented, but they expose students to important skills, but we're also looking at how to bring it together. So we've written this up in a couple of ways. So how this came into being is written up in the first paper. And we've also developed a library guide. So we've developed a set of resources, books, journal articles, blog posts, videos that the course instructors can use. And we hope that these might be more broadly useful. So if you're interested in the library guide, there's also a reference here to get access to that. So the last thing I want to talk about is a toolkit that you may find useful and that I also hope you might contribute to. So the focus is on tools, so concepts, methods, processes, frameworks, and we have more than 600 of these. We have more than 700 contributors from more than 60 countries. That means we still have a lot of countries to go, but I'm delighted to say that we do have contributions from Brazil. We'd like a lot more. It's read in every country of the world. We apparently even have readers in North Korea, which I find a little bit hard to stand, but it is very widely read, I guess is the important thing to say. Integration and implementation draws on inter and transdisciplinarity, but it says the inter and transdisciplinarity are not the only areas that deal with complex problems. So it also draws on systems thinking, on action research, on complexity science. And it tries to cover all elements of the expertise. So it particularly looks at systems, it looks at context, it looks at unknowns, it looks at diversity, integration, decision-making, research implementation, change, communication, teamwork, and stakeholder engagement. This is the work that I do basically, and where disciplining interdisciplinarity fits. So I've been arguing that we need a discipline of integration and implementation sciences. I'm not going to talk about this at any length. This is the discipline in a page, or in a page. And if you're interested, you can read more about it, or we can talk more about it in the question and answer period. Just to give you the highlights, what I've been thinking about is the expertise that somebody needs to tackle big complex problems. And I'm suggesting that there are three things. They need to understand the problem and potential actions more comprehensively. We can never fully understand the problem, but we need to have a better understanding. And that involves being able to understand the problem as a system. It means understanding the context that the problem comes in. It means understanding not only what we know, but also what we don't know, which we often ignore. that we need to understand that there's a diversity of perspectives, that different people understand the problem differently. They think different things are important. There are different worldviews that you have to take into account. There are power differences. There are differences in interests. And that to move forward, at least some of those differences need to be integrated into a new way of thinking. So understanding is important, but it's not enough. We also need to, as researchers, to be able to support policy and practice improvement, whether that's being made by government or business or civil society. And that means that we need to understand how decision-making processes work. We need to understand how to get our research implemented, and we need to understand how complex change is. And this is work that involves interacting, and we need to be able to interact effectively. So we need to be able to communicate effectively. We need to be able to work in teams effectively, and we need to work with stakeholders effectively, where stakeholders are the people who are affected by the problem and the people who are in a position to do something about the problem. So the toolkit has new resources and golden oldies. So if you did something many years ago that was really important, that's also worth contributing. It's a living toolkit that brings together what we know, both from the past and present. They aim to be short and easy to read, so they're around 750 words. And we're aiming to be global. So as I said, we're read all around the world, and we have contributions from 61 countries, and we're trying to get more. So let me give you a flavour of what these contributions look like. And here I've chosen contributions from the Latin America and Caribbean region. So you'll see a familiar face in this first one, which is a practical framework. So there's work to draw on, and this is really important work. There's been thinking about how to institutionalize interdisciplinarity in the region, and this particular contribution draws on that. There's some great work being done in, particularly in the Caribbean, looking at particularly evidence-informed policymaking, looking at one particular aspect of this. Some great work from Uruguay on looking at power. Some really important work from Brazil about epistemic paternalism. Excuse me. Really thinking about when you're working with communities, how do you do that in a way that's empowering for the communities and not just extractive for the researchers? And then again, this is another one that looks at how to bridge the gap between knowledge and policy, really important. There's a great framework that's been developed, which is part of the paternalism one on the previous slide, looking at how to work effectively with stakeholders. Some terrific work from a group in Bolivia about a particular dialogue method that's useful. Some work from Brazil about integrating disciplines that's useful. Work from Uruguay about how to teach undergraduates. This work also from Brazil about how to deal with complex systems, characteristics, and this work on how to intervene in complex systems. So that's it. I welcome any interactions that you might want to have. There are a couple of websites. The first one is the Toolkit website. The second one is a theoretical framework that I've developed. We have an active group on LinkedIn. You can see a number of videos that have been made on YouTube, and I'm delighted to correspond with anybody who's interested. So I look forward to a lively discussion.
Gabriele, thank you very much for your contribution. I'm sure it will be very useful. So now we open up the floor for some questions, comments. Please, if you have some questions, you can speak in Portuguese and we'll try to translate, right? So feel free to raise your question.
I can make some questions. So,
I think you.
yes. Professor, thank you very much for your speech. That was very, very enlightening. My question is, how can we start to work with transdisciplinarity here in the university? What's your recommendation for a university that would like to start a systematic process about this so fantastic discipline?
Recipe, good.
Yeah. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you want to answer now, or you want to take another question?
Whatever you think is better, Danilo.
Does someone have another question? Uma outra pergunta, comentário? Yeah, okay, Matheus was there. So, Gabriele, I think André's question is quite important because really the issue is to start. Do you start with research, teaching, or there are so many ways, outreach, all together, where, how, And also I would add something, Gabriele, in terms of university structure. We now have the support of our leadership here, which I think is very important. They're here today and they will take it further. So, in terms of university organization and structure, are there some suggestions? I mean, how can university get organized to implement transdisciplinarity?
So, the first thing, I guess I've given you a bunch of examples that I hope will stimulate some thinking, but you have to, I don't understand your context well enough to give you any recommendations. What I can do is suggest some things for you to think about, which is where is starting likely to be most effective? Who's got the most energy? This is always going to depend on the energy of the people who are doing it. Who's got energy? Who's got drive? Who's already got a bit of a track record? And what do they want to do? And I would back those people. I would suggest starting where you are and building on that, rather than trying to make some grand plan, but not just doing more of the same, looking at ways you can expand what you're doing, and really give those people some additional resources so that they can implement their vision. That's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to get the people with the vision to be able to implement that vision in your university. It's really important that you don't try to be perfect. Good enough is good enough, right? So do what's possible, but do it. So it's getting momentum, starting to build momentum is what's really important. Don't spend a lot of time planning, because by the time you finish planning, the leadership might have changed and you might lose interest. So my suggestion is start and get better as you keep going. Does that help? Are there other? What would you? I'd throw the question back to you. Where do you think the strengths are in your university, and what do you think you could build on?
Thank you, Gabriele. Matheus, you have a question, right?
Thank you so much, Gabriele. And following up your question, actually, University of Caxias do Sul do have some initial conditions for working into inter and transdisciplinarity, because it is a university very oriented to solve regional problems. We have a physical location of the campus that enables researchers from different disciplines to connect, to meet. This is different from other faculties where sometimes one faculty cannot even meet a professor from other area for physical distance. But we do have a concern, and I remember Professor Danilo, you spoke about that in the first meeting, that is about our evaluation system in Brazil. As researcher, we are evaluated like to stay in the box. I even received a feedback from a scholar proposal that say you are connecting too much with education and environmental research, you need to stay in your box. And this is something that we live here, that we know the role is going to this direction, but we are still in an evaluation system that leads us to a discipline. We have, Professor André, I think we have in UCS 19 PhD programs. We have now the 20th program that is multidisciplinary, but it was very, very hard to approve. So this is our concern now. How do you see the role of the evaluation system, and how can we position, considering we have this context, but we will have this wheel, but sometimes you say, okay, we are going to be in this direction. Later I cannot access funding because you are not that. How do you see that, and how we can even be able to communicate and engage the researchers that are still more focused in the disciplines to this pattern? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really important question. And you know, you're not alone in that, right? But the good thing to say is that evaluation systems are changing. And so so I would say two things. One is organize. Go to the conference, meet other people who have the same problem, figure out how you can work together to put pressure on the system to change. So that's the first thing, you know. And I don't need to tell you in Latin America that organization is important. You have a history of organizing to make change happen, right? So use that skill. The second is that you just, until that happens, so you have to keep the pressure on, right? Until that happens, for many scholars, you have to lead a double life. So you have to keep doing your disciplinary work, and you have to do your inter and transdisciplinary work. And you need to maintain your ability and your profile in the things that count, and to keep pushing in the areas that you're trying to develop. So there are a couple of things. There are more journals now to publish in. There are more grants now, and some of those are quite prestigious. And so going for those is important. Again, it can be helpful to collaborate internationally to get access to some of those international grants as well as what is available locally. It can be helpful in teams to organize so that everybody's supporting everybody else to get the strong disciplinary profile, but to keep doing the inter and transdisciplinary work. So this is a question of politics, much more than it's a question of academic learning, right? I mean, doing it well is important, but getting the politics right is also critically important.
Thank you, Gabriele. I would even say, Gabriele, that we may take advantage of transdisciplinary work to improve our disciplinary work. Is this correct? Yeah? That's the way I feel sometimes. So when I'm working with other people from other fields, it helps me in my particular discipline. So I think we really have to learn how to deal with it. Yeah. So we have time for more questions. I would like to know, students, what do you think about it? Giovanni, you as a doctoral student, what do you think about it? Diga alguma coisa e a Carolina traduz. How do you see it?
A Carolina também me soprou aqui uma coisa. A questão da extensão, professor Danilo. Não. A extensão, professor Danilo, se é um espaço para essa posição de interdisciplinaridade. Ou seria um...
Sim, como vocês percebem isso como estudantes, né?
Eu acho que se fosse uma pergunta, seria mais ou menos como o professor enxerga o papel do community engagement as a space for transdisciplinarity work, like inside the university, because here in Brazil, our system is organized in an intersection between teaching, research, and community engagement. So maybe transdisciplinarity grows in the community engagement space is a good.
Did you get the question? Did you get the question from Carolina? No,
Sorry.
Carolina, we have here community outreach, teaching, and research. I think Carolina would say, was saying, outreach may have a particularly important role for developing transdisciplinarity. I think that was her comment, and we'd like to hear something from you about it, maybe. Yeah.
So that way of organising what counts is not unusual, right? So we call it service, and it can be a whole lot of things. But you're right. I think that is a place to start. It's really important. And again, I don't feel like I need to tell you this in Brazil because you have a long history of it. But it's really important that our focus on academic work and academic progression doesn't take away the empowerment part of community engagement, that we don't let our needs for advancement as academics taint the way that community engagement is done. It needs to be done in the right way. It needs to be done so that communities, it's not extractive of communities, so that it's empowering of communities, that it's working with communities, and that's the balance. I guess the good thing is that there is more and more recognition of that, and there is more and more ability to publish that work. So it's about not just doing the work, but also, and doing the work well and in the right way, but also thinking about how can I get mileage out of this work? How can I publish it? Where can I publish it? How can I use it in my teaching? So that they're not, even though they're separate when you are writing your case for promotion or review every year, that in your mind you're thinking about how do I make everything work together and get mileage out of all the work that I do. Community engagement work, when it's done well, is incredibly time consuming and incredibly hard. And that's why so you also need to think about, so how can I get academic credit for this without it becoming extractive? And I guess the good thing is that with the wind at our backs in transdisciplinarity, around the world, people are understanding that working with communities cannot be extractive. It has to be done in the right way. And so there's more and more support for doing this in a way. So the people who will be reviewing your papers in the good journals understand those difficulties, and you can write about those difficulties. So there's a whole lot of things so it's about thinking about how do you get mileage out of that. So I think you're absolutely right. That's a good place to start, but it's also about not just being service, but also thinking about what it means academically for making transdisciplinary work better and more effective.
Gabriele, if you allow me, I have another question as Professor Mateus speak. Here in Brazil, we have the disciplines separated in different boxes, and that came from the government. So now we have, for example, here in the university, in this university and other universities, students and professors with these intrinsic mentalities. I think that's very normal, regular in another university, maybe in your university as well. For example, now we have a very nice speech about transdisciplinarity, but for the professor in class, that part of the discipline is the most important thing in the whole world. How can you change the mentality of the professor? How can you change the mentality of the students to understand this transdisciplinarity as a whole?
In some ways, we spend a lot of time worrying about the people who don't get it, if I understood your question correctly, right? I think it's more important to start off by meeting with the people who do get it and working together and building up a community. So if you think about how a discipline operates, the physicists and the immunologists don't care what the rest of the world thinks about them. What they care about is what their peer group thinks about them. And so one of the things that I think is important for us to do is to build our own peer group of people who think that this is important and who get it and who can support each other. I don't think we can ignore the other group, but I want to put some emphasis on not just worrying about the people who are wedded to the disciplines. Just as not all of us want to be physicists, not everybody wants to be involved in transdisciplinary work, and that's fine. But what we have to do is we have to change the power balance, right? So we can't be the group that gets the crumbs from the table. We need to be a group that's also sitting at the table when policy and funding decisions are made. So we need to be part of the action. And so, again, this is about thinking politically. So how do we get a seat at the table? We have to unite with other people. We have to look for opportunities. We have to organise. We have to make sure that our voices are heard. And we have to be good enough, right? That's the other thing that's really important. We can't ask for special favours. So, and then I guess we start inviting people in so that the people who are very much in their disciplines, but who show some interest, give them a role, give them an opportunity to get involved and help them become, to see how this strengthens their work. I think the thing that Danilo said earlier, which is that transdisciplinary work also improves your own discipline, is really important. So being involved in a project where people are thinking differently from you brings questions to the table that can help you improve, do something more innovative in your own discipline, right? And so that should also be something that you're trying to do. So think about how can we, if we want an economist, we're going to involve an economist,
Não, essa é a nossa.
Era o nosso?
E não, essa é de quando esse legal nosso, eles fazem o seu.
Nós tivemos um pequeno problema técnico com nossa palestrante. Dessa forma, iremos encerrar a transmissão no YouTube. Agradecemos muito a presença de todos e desejamos a todos uma ótima noite. Muito obrigado por estarem conosco. Até mais.